Well, so now you're actually touching something that is another movement I started, but this is just in Belgium,
Mm.
is Be Libre. And Be Libre is like the Belgium open source movement, because in Belgium there was no open source movement.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who lives in Belgium uh, took it to the European level, because Brussels is also the capital of Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually has to happen on European level. But so by consequence, nothing happened in Belgium, um, and I've been advocating for this. I call it a critical dependency,
Mm.
and I've been mapping DNS records for municipalities. Um, and in the DNS records, one of the things you can see are the MX records and the SPF records,
Mm-hmm.
showing you what mail services a municipality is using.
Mm-hmm.
And this is uh, always an underestimation, because you always have people who are using a firewall or a proxy or a locally hosted server.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learned back then was that in Belgium, between 70 and 85% at least of the municipalities was using Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
100% of the police department is running Microsoft. The army is running Microsoft. 70% of the hospitals are running Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, 80% of the schools are running Microsoft, and 30% are running Google.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an overlap. Some are running both. Um, and banks, notaries, advocates, lawyers, newspapers, journalists. I mean, all the journalism is using Microsoft,
Mm-hmm.
bar none, even the smaller ones. Um, if at a given point Microsoft says, for some reason, trade embargo, GDPR violation, tripling the price, big scandal in espionage, I don't care what, the plug gets off, gets
Mm-hmm.
disconnected, and the whole Outlook domain gets blocked in Europe. I mean, we have a major crisis at hand.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not because it's a bad product, but it's because
It's a
it's a
single
single
point of
point
failure.
of
Yeah.
failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. And so it's once upon a time. Now I'm going back to the old people here, the great the neckbeards. The internet was conceived as a distributed, unbreakable network. So we came from ring tokens and star tokens, and then we said we're gonna like make this whole spaghetti of cables. And if somebody bombs on New York, well, no problem. The connection will find its own way, and TCP IP got developed, and all these great protocols found their existence and their role,
Mm-hmm.
and everything became decentralized. But what we see now is everything is getting re-centralized into, I would say, on corporate level, Microsoft stack,
Mm-hmm.
on consumer level, Google stack, and you have these two major points of failure.
Mm-hmm. Well, a
Um,
great example of it's sort of relevant to this as well. When Cloudflare has an outage, that
yeah,
will, in some cases, knock down half the internet.
yeah. So I was talking on an event where like in Belgium there were like 50 CISO and TOs and C-level technical people,
Mm-hmm.
and I gave my talk about the single point of failure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, look, if you're doing business in a serious way, you should be aware of these risks. If Microsoft is a single point of failure for you, you must have at least a fallback plan for critical infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
I challenge you, in your firewall, block the Microsoft domains and see what stops working. And people got a bit annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And people started shifting on their share. And then one person, he was very brave. He he took the took the word, and
Mm-hmm.
he said, "Look, if that happens, that problem is so much out of scope. That's of the same order as a pandemic or a war.
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, this problem is much bigger than our company, and this is not something we can solve. So basically, what he was saying at that point was,
Not my problem.
because if not my problem, but it's the government has to solve it.
Right, right. It's above my pay grade.
Yeah,
That's someone that's like,
yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, if that is the case, if you're convinced that is the case, then please reach out to your government policymakers and loud and clear tell them that's your expectation.
Mhm.
Tell them, look, city of Brussels, look, Belgium, look, Europe. If Microsoft goes down, we'll be pointing at you, and then we have our next too big to fail banking crisis. So be prepared for that, because the governments are going to say, not my problem, it's your business. So who's going to solve it? I mean,
Yeah, I hadn't even considered like how bad that would be, but yeah, like Amazon's another example of that, right? Where there's so much.
yeah, absolutely.
Like, you look at, and what's really bad with the Amazon stuff is you look at all of these little like VPS providers, and there's a lot of them which are Amazon resellers. So you might think you're using something independent, someone with their own hardware, but it's just taking AWS and then just reselling it to you.
Yeah. hmm Yes, sure. But also, I mean, like in Europe, there's like very much talk now about a sovereign cloud, and because it has to be GDPR compliant, and and a lot of worries about the American Cloud Act and the FISA Act, and so how basically if the American extraterritorial law can mandate companies access to servers even if they are physically located inside Europe.
Mhm.
So this means that, I mean, your data isn't private enough if the CIA or the FBI or a three-letter agency mandates Google or the AWS or Microsoft to open up their server, and they have built all kinds of legal and technical hurdles to say how much they're doing their best to not grant access. And I really believe they are doing this in all the ways possible. But at the end of the day, if the law says you have to, I don't see them saying goodbye. We're gonna move Microsoft to Ireland. They're not gonna
Right.
do that.
There have been cases where certain countries have, like, a good example of this is where South Korea, they wanted companies that were using certain amount of data to start paying for data costs within the country. The streaming website Twitch, for example, was really going to be affected by this because, video streaming is very expensive. And they just said, okay, we're just not going to operate in your country. And you can do that with smaller countries, with like smaller populations. Things have happened in the past with certain countries wanting to charge for links being shown with things like Google News. But you can't really do that with a country like the US or a country, like a trade zone like the EU, things like that. If they wanted to do something, then it's way too big of a block to just say, okay, we're not going to operate there.
Yeah, indeed. But I lost my point again. Yeah. So
Freedom.
okay, freedom. Yes, but so for I think you remember the case where the ICC court Judge Karim Khan, his account got blocked, and Microsoft was very quick to elaborate and explain that they didn't block the account of Karim Khan. Later on, it appeared that this was technically correct because the ICC blocked the account of Karim Khan. Because if the ICC wouldn't block the account of Karim Khan, Microsoft would completely block the whole ICC out. So and so this is like a typical example, I think, of how sometimes legal tricks are being used to to not have to do not having to abide by law because they didn't have they didn't follow the order of the executive order of the American government. But the ICC did block the account of Judge Khan, and afterwards they just ditched Microsoft and are now operating in their own ecosystem that which is open source. So I think they did a smart move because this way they held access to all their data. They could migrate it, and now they're moving over. But these companies, I mean, I understand them. They are companies. I mean, they have to make a living.
Sure.
Same for System 76. I mean, they're implementing H control in their computers in Pop OS. Yeah, I think you talked about it. I don't remember.
Yes. Well, at the same time as that,
it,
Carl is also going and actually speaking with legislators to try to get this changed.
Yeah. So I mean, I very much appreciate how they're approaching it, and I really refuse to be negative about it. I was a bit sarcastic. There's going to be an episode of Roller Coaster on Hacker Public Radio in a few weeks, where I'm advocating all in favor of H control, and I'm trolling System 76 a little bit too. But I really very much appreciate how they approach it. So I want to say it on the record here, because I think they're doing a great job both in business wise and as advocacy wise. But yeah, so I mean, it's a tough world to balance in, and I understand it. And yeah, I mean, that's also what I was trolling about. But basically, yeah, sure, they can implement H control, and maybe at a certain point you will have to enter, pop in your ID to be able to visit certain sites. But I mean, this will only encourage young people to become more creative in hacking. And I mean, this is in a certain way, it will create the next generation of hackers